everyone, I'm Miss Williamson, the Head of Film Studies here at the Bromford School and Sixth Form College. I'm guessing you're here because you're interested in film studies, which is fantastic. I want to use this opportunity to take you through the course itself, the A-Level Film Studies course that we run here at Bromford's, both in terms of the way you'll be examined at the end of it and what the work you'll need to do throughout the course, but also the content in terms of the films that we'll cover and some of the ideas and the themes and the context and things that we'll explore as part of that. First off though, I want to talk to you about why I think this is a fantastic course, and I'm biased for sure. I love the course. I did film studies as an A-level myself when I was 16 and I loved it. It's not something I ever anticipated doing. I thought I would drop it after my first year because I did mine back when we could do ASs, and I didn't. I just loved it. After week one I knew it was what I wanted to study, and I ended up going on to study at university and now teaching it, and that's just something that's fantastic for me. So I'm really privileged to be able to talk to you about why it's so fantastic and be able to hopefully teach some of you it as well. It is a course like no other in that it will prepare you for the world that we live in so incredibly well. The course is a lot like English in that it's very analytical and there is a significant amount of writing involved. But unlike English and some of the texts that you might explore there, it is so interesting in terms of the way that we'll go back through history, we go around the world for these films. In that respect, it will teach you so much about the world in which we live. Some of our contexts that we explore will cover issues of race, issues of gender and sexuality, issues of age representation, and an exploration of some of the biggest contexts of our time and of our world, like the development of digital technology, for example. We'll look at some of the contexts like wartime around the world and how that's been represented on film and how that's impacted the decisions that filmmakers and countries have made in terms of the messages that they want to put out on film. Not just that, but it's a really fascinating course in terms of creativity, and that's something that some courses are hugely lacking in nowadays, but this still has an opportunity for you to be creative, which we'll talk about the coursework, the non-exam assessment component in a moment. But you will have an opportunity, not just at that time, but throughout the course, to make your own creative choices, as well as try and explore why directors might have made certain creative choices as well. The beauty of the course for me is that it takes us through so much, through so many time periods, through so many countries around the world, and through so many styles of film, the likes of which you're unlikely to probably explore on your own unless you're a huge film enthusiast yourself. So this will broaden your horizons hopefully and take you on a bit of a journey. That's not too much of a cliche. So the course itself comes in 3 parts. It is a 2-year course. It's linear, so you will sit it for the 2 years. There's no AS component in this. We don't run AS levels here at Bromford's. So this is a 2-year course, and you'll see there that it's 70% exam and 30% NEA, which is the exciting thing that I was telling you about before. It's not entirely exam based, which I know will be a relief for some of you who are fearful or nervous about exams. 30% non-exam assessment, which I'll come to in a moment, is largely practical, which is really good. So the first component is a component that takes us largely across America, but also through Britain. So it is 35% of your qualification overall, and there will be, just for this component on its own, a 2.5-hour exam at the end of it, which will sit at the end of year 13. This will explore 6 feature-length films, and they'll be done in 3 pairs. So you will start off with this unit looking at 2 films, one from a classical Hollywood period between 1930 and 1960, and the other from the later Hollywood period between 61 and 1990. might not sound like a huge amount of difference, but actually there is a significant amount of difference. Those of you who've sat the GCSE course will be aware of some of the things that changed in Hollywood during that time. And even though it's not a huge amount of time difference, it's significant changes in Hollywood, which is really fascinating. The films that we study for that at the moment, though these are always subject to change by the exam board, are Some Like It Hot, which is a Marilyn Monroe film. I'm sure a number of you will be familiar with Marilyn Monroe. And the film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is based on a book, one of Jack Nicholson's most famous films, and just a really, really great film, which I think will surprise a lot of you. Section B is another kind of pair of films. This is a 2-film study. This is looking at 2 American films, one mainstream film and one independent or indie film, as you may be more familiar with the term. Here we get to look at La La Land, which some of you may think, God, that's awful. But La La Land is our most up-to-date film on the course at the moment. It is a musical. I told you we'd be looking at loads of different genres, but it's a really interesting take on the world that we're living in at the moment, because it explores in quite a hidden way quite a lot of the politics behind the Donald Trump and the Hillary Clinton presidency campaigns. So it's a lot of hidden stuff in there that you might not expect. Paired with that, we'll look at an independent film, which at the moment is Captain Fantastic, something that I'm sure some of you might be aware of, but was a really quite low budget film, also made at the same sort of time as La La Land. A lot to do with family and the divisions within families, but again, something that students typically really love and is quite surprising to them. Lastly, in this unit, we will look at British film. At the moment, we are looking at two British films. We look at This Is England, which is also a series, which was made into a series after the film, and we look at Trainspotting. Some of you, I'm sure, or parents at least, will be aware of that. You'll notice throughout on this slide, you'll see that it talks about 1 question from 2, and that's kind of part of the beauty of the paper as well. It is all essay based, the exams, so you'll have 3 40-mark questions that you'll answer for this paper, out of a choice of 6 possible questions. So there is that degree of your own control there as well. We then come to component 2, and I think it's important to say at this point that we don't actually study the course in this order. We actually start with component 2, section A, just because of some of the things that we are asked to study within these units. It actually makes the most sense to start with component 2 because it has the least additional study, which I'll explain in a second. But you'll see this one's called Global Filmmaking Perspective. So this is the unit that takes us more around the world in terms of our different types of film, our different styles of film, and film from different places other than Hollywood. Again, it's a 2.5-hour exam. This is weighted in the same way as component 1. Again, it's 35%, which together will make up your 70% of your exam in total. And again, this is longer answer questions out of a choice of questions, but there are some slight differences in this unit, in this component. This one is only 5 films, so you'll see that some films are studied on their own in this unit, which is different to the first one. So this is the unit we'll start with. This is the section we'll start with, the global film. We will look at 2 films, both of which are foreign language films. Please don't let that put you off. Please don't prejudge them. They are fantastic films and really engaging films. We'll actually start by looking at the film City of God, which you can see on the screen there, which is a Brazilian film about the gangs that grew in the favelas of Brazil between the kind of 60s and the early 2000s. It's a really great film in terms of representation and censorship, so we'll look at themes of violence within that film and of language and issues that we have in terms of the language that's used in the film. So it's a really quite an engaging and great one to start with. We'll then look at the moment, a film called Pan's Labyrinth, which is a Spanish film set just after World War II, and about a girl who explores a labyrinth, so this is more of a fantasy film. So I hope you're starting to see as we look through these that there are really a mix of genres, and there is therefore something for everybody. Some of you will prefer certain films over others, I'm sure, but there is a real mix in this, and that's again part of the beauty of it. We will then look at documentary film, and this is a fascinating one because this is probably something that you're not hugely familiar with. You might be familiar with documentary television, you might have watched some David Attenborough or something, but this is more about the study of particular filmmakers and perhaps why they might have chosen to represent or tell their stories in the way that they have. We often think that documentaries, by their nature, they are non-fiction, therefore they must be true. But this unit will teach us that actually that's not the case. And just because it's branded as non-fiction doesn't mean that it's a completely true and accurate account of any particular event. So this is one that we study on its own. We've, for this, look at the film Amy, which is a documentary made about the singer Amy Winehouse, who passed away a number of years ago. I'm sure this is probably the one, or at least the one with the content that you're most familiar with, I would imagine. This is a one film study, so there is only one film that you need to reference in this, and as such this is a 20-mark question. So anything that's got two films in it is always a 40-mark question. Anything with one film in it is always a 20-mark question. Next section, and we tend to do this in year 13, is looking at silent cinema, and again, please reserve judgment there. Don't let that put you off. It's really important that we understand and look at how film has developed over time, and obviously it all began with silent films at the start of the 20th century. So we will go back and we will look at silent cinema and look at the progression of Hollywood and how stories were told when there were no words. For this we look at a German / American film. There's a little bit of debate about what it's more of, called Sunrise, a really kind of melodramatic and heavy drama film about a relationship and an affair. It's something that is probably quite unexpected because it's quite heavy on the relationship content, and that might surprise you, being that it was so long ago that they would typically show that sort of thing on screen. We will look at how Hollywood has evolved to include censorship that it didn't have at the time. And the last part of the course, which we tend to do at the end of year 13, which a lot of people really look forward to, is experimental films. So all those films that aren't quite perhaps mainstream, they might look or seem a little bit strange. For this at the moment we look at a Tarantino film, and I'm sure lots of you are familiar with the work of Quentin Tarantino. If you haven't seen one of his films, I'm sure you've heard of them. And for that we study Pulp Fiction, which is a film from the mid-90s which kind of paved the way for quite a lot of experimental film and film that was a little bit different to the norm. And with that we look at how directors might develop their own signature styles. We look at how narratives can be told when they're not perhaps your typical beginning, middle and end stories. And it will just give you a whole different perspective on cinema. Again, one film study, so this is another 20-mark question. Across all of these components, or both of these components in all of these sections, we have the opportunity to study so much about the world at the time, about the issues of feminism, of equal rights, which is obviously incredibly prevalent always, but particularly now, and at which point it will give you a bit of a background and an understanding of where some of the current issues that we're dealing with in terms of race, in terms of gender and sexuality, and particularly attitudes that we're seeing coming out of America at the moment, we'll start to really understand where those things have come from and how they've been portrayed on screen, and how cinema has been used as a little bit of a rebel at times to try and challenge the way that we see the world and to try and educate people as well. So in a kind of meta way, you are going to be students studying film, and within that studying how film has been used to educate people. So it's lots of layers of education that we're going to explore. The Final part of the course is the NEA, and this is component 3. And at the moment you have a choice of tasks that you complete here. We tend to do this towards the end of year 12. This is your remaining 30% of your qualification, and this is where you get that opportunity to be really creative yourself and put into practice the sorts of things that you've been studying. So you will produce at this point either a short film where you can go out and film, make your own short film, or a screenplay and a storyboard for a short film. Whatever option you choose, you will always have to do an evaluation at the end of that, but you will also have to relate it to short films that we will study. So we will study a whole bunch of short films that exist, all the way from kind of 4-minute films to kind of 30-minute films, and look at how short films are created and developed and how they are very, very different to mainstream. So if you are somebody who is quite creative and likes the idea of this opportunity to be creative yourself and to create something you can be really, really proud of, it can start a whole show reel for university or for further study or whatever it is you want to go on and do. It gives you that opportunity, and it also, for those of you, like I said at the beginning, who are perhaps a little bit fearful or anxious about exams, it means that you walk into your exam with 30% already completed. So you know that you haven't got the entire weight of 2 years study resting on those 5 hours in total of exams. You know that you've already done some, which is often a really, really nice thought. So other than the fact you've got to link it to some short films, you have the opportunity to be as creative as you want and to be as thoughtful as you want and come up with completely your own ideas, which is fantastic. In terms of what you'll need to be successful on this course, obviously you'll need the usual things that you might expect for A-level. So a lever arch file, they're the big ones, and some dividers. You can get those really cheaply from lots of places, and some A4 hole punched paper, so that you can nice and neatly put it into a file, not small pads. They're pretty useful for A-level. For film specifically, the coursework tasks, the NEA tasks in particular, you can have your own cameras. It's not a prerequisite. You don't have to have a big fancy video camera or anything like that. Your smartphones will be more than advanced enough to do what the exam board are asking you. So you'll just have to have access to a camera in that respect. So it doesn't need to be a fancy DSLR or anything like that. You will also, of course, need your usual stationery requirements. The more stationery you have, the better, I find, for this. So post-its are always really, really helpful when it comes to marking things up for revision, highlighters, all those sorts of things, just to make your notes really clear to you so that you are able to study from them later on. I'm sure a number of you have seen this already. It was sent home to those students who are within Bromford's. This is just giving you a bit of a sense of some of the things you could be doing at the moment, just in advance of the course starting. You can see you've obviously got the information about the exam board on there, which is Educas, which you're probably unfamiliar with unless you've studied the GCSE course. We only currently use Educas for film, but they are fantastic. An example of how good they are can be found at that top link. They produce so many resources that are so useful to students and to teachers. There's a whole host of resources on that link that I've given you there. There is some bridging work, which if you have any questions about, just please give me a shout. If you're within Bromford's, get yourself onto Teams and have a little look at that. There are also some resources that you can look at on BBC iPlayer currently. There's a series of short films on there, which is just about cinema generally. And for those of you who might be quite unfamiliar or just might want to broaden your knowledge, there's some great free resources on Interfilm as well. We don't have a textbook specifically for this course, though I've got a master copy of a textbook that I will use. I don't ask that you purchase this because we don't tend to use it a huge amount, but if you are a complete novice and you do want to have a look at a textbook, I have put the picture of the one you're looking for on there. They are on Amazon, they're not cheap, but they are on Amazon, and there are 2 versions, so just look for this one that has that cover, and it's the 2017 onwards one you want from the time that the film spec was changed. This I hope has been useful in terms of understanding a little bit more about the course. By all means, contact me on that email that's on the screen there if you have any questions whatsoever. It's a fantastic course. I say again, I know I'm biased, but it really is engaging and it's exciting. For those of you who've done the GCSE before, I think the A-level is a better course. It's far more interesting, I think. If you haven't done the GCSE before, please don't be put off. It's absolutely fine for you to pick it up as long as you've got an analytical ability and you're fairly good at English. Then this is something that you should well consider. It is fascinating. It will teach you so much about the world you live in, and from that it's a little bit invaluable really. So hopefully I look forward to teaching as many of you as possible in September. Thank you.